Hi, everybody. So today's installation of the Sergeant at Arms is about President Trump's war with the media and about the fake news. So the first problem is it's been a little bit more than a month that President Trump has been in office, and there's been more than enough turmoil. He doesn't think it's been turmoil, but for those of us watching from the outside looking in, it looks like a lot of turmoil. But I think this latest problem, which is him calling everybody the fake news, needs to be addressed. So the problem is this. When President Trump calls legitimate news organizations the fake news, like CNN and the New York Times, and even ABC, NBC, and CBS, what he does is he takes the focus off the actual fake news and they just kind of run under the radar and cash in. That's a bad idea because we need the focus to be on the fake news to get rid of them. The legitimate news organizations, they're going to say things that he doesn't like. That's nothing new. Presidents have had to deal with the news media, attacking them, blatantly attacking them, asking constant questions. But see, that's their job. The First Amendment allows for a free press. We have to respect that, and we have to give that the credit that it deserves, and we have to let those people do their jobs. Now, how they do their jobs, that's a different story. We're going to get to that in a minute, but let me stick with President Trump for a minute. So President Trump, he doesn't like what they have to say. Not news. On top of that, he's calling them the fake news partly because they're citing anonymous sources for some of their information, which he's taking issue with. So we got to attack that from two places. Place number one is anonymous sources. So anonymous sources are a standard in journalism, period. I mean, without anonymous sources, Watergate would never have come to a head. I mean, Deep Throat, though Deep Throat had a code name, wasn't an anonymous source. And without Deep Throat, Watergate would never have been exposed. So that's the most famous example of how anonymous sources works and how it is a valuable piece of journalism, because a lot of people will tell you the truth as long as they don't have to identify themselves. That's the point of it. Part two of this is President Trump has himself cited private sources. He has said he has his sources who tell him different information. So he has to understand, if he gets to have private sources, then the media gets to have private sources. The difference is they have a legitimate history of anonymous sources. The other thing that President Trump needs to understand is he is a public servant now. And so he can't say things like, I'm going to keep it secret, or I'm going to keep you in suspense, or I'm going to surprise you, and expect that to be okay and accept it. That's not okay and accept it, because he's a public servant. And the whole point of being a public servant is to be transparent. In business, sure, you want to keep things to yourself. There are a lot of proprietary issues for competitive reasons. Absolutely. But in the public sector, everything has to be on the table. Everything has to be up front. Everything is subject to public records. Those aren't things he can do. So it is a little hypocritical for him to say anonymous sources create fake news, and then him cite independent sources and private sources himself. So that's a little bit of a problem. But again, he's not a public servant, and I'm not going to keep ringing that bell about public servants. I've gone through that. I won't torture you with that lecture again. But I think he does a disservice when he calls the news media the enemy. So let's be clear, there are no enemies here. The President of the United States is not the enemy. The news media is not the enemy. They've both got jobs to do, and a lot of times they're conflicting, but they're both valuable. Obviously, they're valuable. And I think the news media has to respect the fact that he is the president. I'm going to remind us all again that we're in a position where we elected someone with the idea that we'll see how it goes. Well, this is how it's going. The news media also has to understand that they have to learn how to ask questions and not be on the attack, and not accuse him before they have asked him a question and gotten an answer. So it's naturally adversarial. I get that. But let's not make it even more adversarial than it needs to be. And the whole thing about the enemy, so we as viewers, yeah, we've lost a lot of confidence in the media as well. This is something I've talked about also, which is the media is more focused on ratings and viewership and listeners and circulation and just creating celebrities. That's what they're doing. That's where they are nowadays. And because of all of that, we feel as voters and citizens that our interests aren't being protected or our interests aren't coming first. They're not. So I think what we have to remember is, and the president needs to remember that this is a relationship that he needs, and that the purpose of their work is to report back to the voters and the citizens everything that's happening in the government. And the media has to remember that his role is to be the chief administrator for the United States of America. There are growing pains. I mean, even President Obama said there's kind of no rule book, or there's kind of no a roadmap for how to be president, because there's a little bit of a learning curve regardless. Okay, we got that. But I think President Trump's learning curve is a little bit steeper than most. And before I wrap this all up, I want to reference one thing that I saw this weekend, and it was like a panel discussion with some people in Richmond, Virginia, on Face the Nation. And one of the gentlemen said that one of the things he doesn't like most about President Trump is that he consumes the news. Everything is about him. There's no time of day or place you can go to get away from his presence. And it's like when he walks in the room, he just sucks up all the air in the room. And that's something that he doesn't like. And he doesn't like the whole Twitter thing. I think, this is part of the problem with electing someone like him. This is who he is. He was that person before we elected him. And now, again, we're in a position where we got 4 years to wait for him to fix whatever is wrong with our economy, and to see, if he can acclimate to the role of President of the United States. Good luck to us. So, with that, what I say is leave me comments. Tell me what you think about this whole idea of the press as the enemy. What you think about the fake news, which I've been talking about as well. And what you think about the adversarial relationship between the president and the news media. And so with that, I will adjourn this installation of the Sergeant at Arms. See you next time.